Hello and welcome to today's episode of Rev Folklore Reviews. Today I gave a listen to, and I will be talking about, the latest album from Leonard Cohen, Thanks for the Dance. Thanks for the Dance is the 15th and final studio album from legendary Canadian singer-songwriter-poet Leonard Cohen. It's an album that's just seeing its release about 3 years after Leonard's death back in 2016. This album is primarily made up of sketches that are left over from the You Want It Darker recording sessions, the album that we all thought would be his send-off. Apparently, Leonard wanted his son Adam Cohen to finish these songs, and in the couple weeks between the release of You Want It Darker and Leonard's death, he actually had Adam come into the hospital with a laptop and a microphone to do some reworked vocal lines while he was in the hospital bed. So this album is essentially song ideas left over from a previous album and some a cappella voice recording sessions from an additional 2 hours of recording while Leonard was in the hospital. This album was produced by Adam Cohen, who also produced the previous album. This album sees contributions from other artists like Beck and Damian Rice, as well as longtime collaborators like Javier Mas. With the sort of cobbled together nature of this album, I was really curious how this would wind up playing out. The album starts with a little bit of a minimal feel, just a little bit of plucked guitar, and then the unmistakable voice of Leonard comes booming through with the opening verse, and then the title line, "What Happens to the Heart?" The instrumentation and arrangement of the song, together with the vocals, have a sort of creaking and groaning quality. It sounds like sitting inside an old cabin with old thoughts fluttering around in your head, and maybe looking out the window as the seasons pass by, or at least fall giving way to winter. I have to say that the guitar, the subtle piano, the strings, and Javier Mas's laud playing work perfectly with this song. Kind of some of the fears I had about what they would do with this album were relieved hearing this one. Moving On is a song that's seemingly about relationship regrets with the line, "Who's kidding who? Who's moving on?" It brings up a handful of tender mixed with bitter moments and is over in just a matter of minutes. The Night in Santiago is probably one of the most, if not the most, sexual songs I have heard from Leonard's back catalog. It's about a one-night meetup of a woman. The song provides some details, and also some non-details about the encounter. This is possibly a fictional encounter, but who knows? The song has just a little bit of a Latin feel to it without feeling out of place with the songs that came before it. Thanks for the Dance is the title track, and it brings a waltz feel to it. The song seems to me like it may be a direct follow-up to the song Take This Waltz, which is one of my personal favorites from the older songs Leonard does. The song brings in some bass and also some horns to the instrumentation that really give it more of a feel of motion. Next up, I really love the guitar tone that starts off the song, It's Torn. It feels to me like you're just walking onto a drowsy and dusty spaghetti western that's playing out. I really like how it came together on that one. The next track, The Goal, is more of a spoken word piece than a song, but it still manages to have so much presence and desperation to it. The end line, The Goal fails just short of a reach. It's as though an ember is quickly burning out in a piece that clocks in at just over a minute long. On this one, Leonard feels really present, almost as though he were actually speaking live through the speakers. Just feels really present and just a little bit haunting. The song Puppets is about how everything and everyone seem to have something or someone else pulling the strings. It has a lot of war imagery in it, particularly World War II imagery with the Germans and the Jews, as though it's the only way things could have played out. There's some organs on the song that I thought were a nice addition, but overall, to me anyway, this was one of the weaker songs in this collection. Uh, Not awful, just weaker. Next up, The Hills floats in on this thin layer of synthesizer and some organ. Later it brings in some horns and some really nice backing vocals. The song has a little bit of a Pink Floyd vibe to it to me. It works pretty well together with the melody, and still it fits together with the rest of the album pretty well. It has a line in it, I'm living on pills, for which I thank God. And just maybe that's where the floaty sensation of this song is coming from. The last song on the album is Listen to the Hummingbird. This one also plays out a bit like a short spoken word piece that more or less says, listen to the hummingbird, listen to the butterfly, listen to the mind of God, don't listen to me. The track is really dreamy in its arrangements that push what would probably be less than a minute long spoken piece to about 2 minutes long. But it really feels like a pretty decent way to close out this collection of songs and this album. So I guess maybe my overall thoughts on this record is I came into it a bit skeptical before I listened to it. Skeptical like I typically am when I hear of a posthumous release from any artist that I respect. You know, I wanted this to be handled well if it was going to happen. I didn't want this. I thought it was weird when I saw an interview with Rick Rubin talking about working with Johnny Cash at the end there. And, you know, he did Man Comes Around, and then they were going to do just one more album after Johnny Cash passed away. It's like, well, we were working on a lot more stuff, so I think it's just fair we put out another one, and that felt right. But Rick specifically said, we're not going to treat this like Tupac. We're not going to just keep cranking out more Johnny Cash albums and milking that out over years. And sure enough, that wound up happening in the end, which I don't complain about more Johnny Cash, but it still felt a little bit weird to me. So I was kind of hoping this, you know, wasn't going to be something that felt kind of like that. Overall, I feel this isn't Leonard's strongest work. It's not the most fully realized project that he's had, but it's really also not the weakest. I think it really came out pretty good for what it is. And I'm glad these songs had a chance to make it out into the world. I mean, if I knew that there was this other batch of material that they recorded around the time of You Want It Darker, I might wonder, why aren't they doing something with this? Why don't they finish it? So I guess in that respect, I am glad that they finished it. I'd rather these songs come out than not. And I think they did a pretty good job being respectful with the material and the legacy. Something I found interesting about this album is that it's short. At least short for a Leonard Cohen album. It came in at just under 30 minutes, the whole thing. Most of the songs on here come out around 3 minutes long, several of them under 3 minutes. And I'm kind of used to several songs on a Leonard Cohen album being 5, 6, 7 minutes long. But knowing these songs were really just song sketches and some reworked ideas, it's probably better in some ways if they just let it be a little more concise. I actually like that they didn't try to build these songs into more than they were or more than they were supposed to be, or work them into something that the songs couldn't support. They just let them be what they should be, and this album was handled in a way just to support what was there. And I have to say I really like the production on this album. I think Adam Cohen did a good job making an album that was appropriate for his father's vocals to rest on. I was honestly a little bit surprised that this didn't come out feeling a bit more like a random mess. Instead, it feels right. It feels like it's just the last ember, the last coal left over at the end of a bright career. So overall, it's really pretty good. Definitely worth listening to, particularly if you've been following Leonard Cohen's career for a while and maybe you're sitting on the fence about this release. And I think it's definitely worth giving a listen to. I like the production, and even though it's not the best and not the most fully realized, there's still something special in here, and I recommend you give it a chance yourself. That's my thoughts on this album. So thank you so much for watching and listening to my words. If you like this, you can click the thumbs up. I would also really appreciate it if you would subscribe to our channel. We've been trying to build this up. If you like what we do, please subscribe. We also have a Patreon. If you are interested to find out more about me or my music or my band, there's some links down below for Insomniac Folklore. Other than that, thank you again, and have a terrific day. See you next time.